What's up, everybody? It's your boy Doofplays here, and I'm back with some more YouTube reactions to you guys. So today we're checking out Nintendo is already banning Switch 2. So we're checking out this video from Nintendine. Shout out to him. So before we get into it, don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, turn on post notifications, all that good stuff. Follow my socials, my TikTok, Instagram, and Discord. They'll be in the description, so I can get more views, comments, likes, shares, subscribers, views, clout, fame, some money, and I can stop being a bum and actually make something of my life. So the thing with this is, with that being said, the thing with this is they made it so that if you hack your Switch, they will literally break the hardware. You cannot use it at all. Nintendo's really serious about this shit. So let's just hop into it right now.
Terrible and draconian warnings that were given to us leading Despite all of the terrible and draconian warnings that were given to us leading up to the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, fairly early on we saw many patterns that were seen during the Nintendo Switch 1's life, but at a much quicker rate than we got during the Nintendo Switch 1's life. Over the span of 4 days, all thanks to having extra stock available, the Nintendo Switch 2 managed to hit 3.5 million units sold, obviously with 1/3 of that being in Japan where the Switch 2 was cheaper, and it not being as quick to reach the 1 million number as Sony was, because Sony was able to do it in 24 hours and it took the Switch 3 days to get to that 1.1 million number, which again, they only managed to receive because they actually had stock. Aside from that, with Nintendo's very proud and very puffed out chest exclaiming that their console would not be hackable, within the first 24 hours there was already a route found to get into the system, although it's still
It's so
going to need
freaking amazing to me that
time.
somebody was able to do something. It was a simple like graphics mod though. It doesn't really do anything for like piracy or accessing the system NAND or user NAND or none of that technical jargon. Because I used to follow up Switch hacking back in the day, so I know some stuff. I hacked my 3DS a friend gave me a couple of years back. But yeah, they actually hacked it to display custom graphics. Something in the corner of the screen. I was amazed.
Until you can see all of the custom firmwares come into fruition. And of course, you also have the fact that Nintendo combated scalpers by making sure they overcharged for their console, even though now, 2 weeks later, scalpers are still making a pretty penny off of the console, but it's a fraction of what they would make off of the PlayStation 5 when that came out, because obviously that was a console that was actually in demand. Now, hopefully, with that fun introduction out of the way, I was able to filter out all of the haters that just wanted to come in and make their dumb comments and so they can leave. With the rest of you still around, let's talk about the fact that the Nintendo Switch 2 is already getting their bans. I like to imagine there is just a whole room of people sitting there with a red button in front of them, staring at a bunch of screens, watching each and every single person that bought a Nintendo Switch 2, just waiting for them to sneeze while not properly covering their nose with their elbow, so they can shout fault, hit the red button, and make sure that that person is no longer ever able to access the Nintendo Switch 2
That's the thing, man. Nintendo
console.
ninjas will always get you. They're always watching. They're always watching.
Ever again, or at least the online for the Nintendo Switch 2 console. Credit to Nintendo, however, those sneezes are not enough to get the consoles bricked yet. We haven't heard anything about a console getting bricked. But the bans are coming out, and they're coming out strong. Now, I think that first I should make a defense. Not necessarily for Nintendo, not even for Nintendo fans, but for hackers, for people that mod their consoles, for people that have experience in this field. Quite frankly, anybody that's already gotten their console banned because they decided to put the MIG switch in their Nintendo Switch 2 console kinda deserves it.
8 signs you are on your last reincarnation.
In past life, you were a warrior.
Not because I think Nintendo is in the right for banning your Switch, but because you know you're not supposed to fly too close to the sun without wearing the right amount of sunscreen. It has been all of 12 days since the Nintendo Switch 2 has hit the market, and you're telling me you grabbed a device that was available on the original Switch when they made the Switch 2 to basically play everything the first Switch could play, and you just assumed that nobody over there in Japan grabbed the MIG switch, put it in the Switch 2, and figured out how they were going to make sure you could not use it on the new Switch?
Yeah, that's actually really stupid though, because that was how the original batch of Switches got hacked, and then they patched it with the V2 Switch with the better battery life. And obviously, you know, that translated over into the OLED Switch. The RCM jig. It was a hardware flaw, so the white box Switch, and then they released the V2, which was a red box. And So then to mod that new red box, you had to actually open up the Switch and solder on the mod chips onto the CPU pins, which is a bit risky if you don't know what you're doing, but it can be done. So yeah, obviously that's going to be the first thing they think of because that was the flaw with the initial system.
You deserve the ban. Figured out how they were going to make sure you could not use it on the new Switch? Nah, you deserve the ban. I'm sorry. That's like me naming my son Mario and not expecting a ninja lawyer to show up at the hospital to take my kid away on the day of his birth. You don't play with fire when
Indeed.
the fire is coming from Nintendo. If you're gonna be a hacker, you gotta be smart. And playing with a mixed Switch in the first 10 days of the Nintendo Switch's life is not smart. Now, beyond that, you can already hear what the people that are enjoying this are thinking. You can feel the happiness in their heart while they're hearing that Nintendo is handing out these bans. The weird fetish
I
they
really
have
like how this
because
game
they
looks for
just
some
like to
reason.
give themselves a pat on the back for being law-abiding weirdos. You agreed to the terms of service. What did you expect? Let's be real. Nobody's using this for their actual hardware. They're clearly pirating. Yeah, they might be right, but that's besides the point. First off, terms of services are a load of
Nobody
crap,
reads
and
them
everybody
anyway.
knows they're a load of crap. Even courts many times know that terms of services are loads of crap. If you buy something and you cannot use said thing unless you click agree and accept, but you can only click agree and accept after you buy that thing, that's crap.
No, literally no
also,
one.
nobody reads terms of services. Let's
It's
be
crazy
real.
to me that
And
somebody
even
actually
if it
types
was
that shit
written-
out. I'm like, wow, there's a person on Earth that read this because they wrote it and they had to proofread it to make sure there's no errors. That is insane to me.
On every single previous Nintendo console. Once upon a time, people didn't have to worry about getting banned despite the fact that those things were in the terms of services. So it's not a shocked Pikachu face situation that they're suddenly getting banned. It's a holy crap, Nintendo has powers now that we just could not foresee 10 years ago. That's more worrisome than anything else. Because in addition to talking the talk, they are walking the walk and they're making sure people know that they are walking the walk. The issue with the Mix Switch, the issue with mods, the issue with all of these things is that tampering with the tech that you buy, that you bring into your house, gets you banned even if you're not pirating anything. So even if you got hundreds of pearls around your neck and you're clutching every single one of those pearls, it does not change the fact that people are getting banned without any consideration of if what they are doing is considered legal or illegal or infringement or not. And no amount of agreeing to terms of services will change that. That's why we call these things draconian. Because aside from that, it's not only the Mix Switch that's getting people banned. And
You
I guess
know,
I should have explained
not
this
to
a few
go
minutes
off
ago, but
topic, even though I am by saying this, and I know it will eventually happen, but I can't wait to see the Switch 2 in different colors. Yeah, really looking forward to that.
for those of you that don't know, the Mix Switch has a little SD card slot. You put it in there, you can put all the Switch games you want on there, and you'll be able to play them. Apparently, it worked pretty well on the Switch 1, and apparently it also worked pretty well at the Switch 2 for the first week, but now every single person that put it in their Switch 2, even if they did it while they were offline, after coming on and playing something else, they got banned.
Hold on,
At
let me
least
see what this Mix
allegedly.
Switch thing looks like. Oh, Mix Switch. Hold on. Let me pull that up. Oh, I remember this. I was watching a video on Modern Vintage Gamer. He was talking about this. You put the SD card in, and obviously it's shaped like a cartridge. I'm wondering if it's formatted as an XCI, because that's what the cartridge games are on Switch when you dump them. That's the file format it uses. Interesting. Joy-Cons being $94 is insanity. Even at $70, that was crazy. Anyway, back to the video.
That's what people are saying online. How else they got banned? At least allegedly, that's what people are saying online. However, other people are also saying something entirely different. People that had accounts on the original Switch where that Switch was banned are learning now when they log into their Switch 2s that they can't use the same account on the Switch 2 because that automatically triggers something making the Switch 2 get banned. So Imagine logging into the Nintendo Switch 2 with the account that you had on your Nintendo Switch 1, which was banned, and instead of Nintendo being like, this account is not allowed to work on our consoles because we're trying to protect ourselves from piracy, instead they're like, hey, it's this Koopa again. Jump on his shell, break his back.
Literally
Straight
can't use it
ban
again.
for that console. Someone else reported that they sold their Switch 1 to somebody, and that person that bought that Switch modded it, and because they had already transferred onto this new account and started their new Switch 2 life, when Nintendo got a hold of the Switch 1 and banned it,
Switch
this
2,
person
that's
also
crazy.
got banned on the Switch 2. Again, these are based off of his reports, and they claim that they had reformatted the thing before they sent it to them. Right, but here's the thing. This is all a bunch of he said, she said. This is all a bunch of everybody
That's
claiming they're
insane.
innocent, as well as others claiming that Nintendo is the second coming of Jesus and can do no wrong. So at the end of the day, everything is
still
going to
can't
be
believe they
shrugged
charge
off
for
and
this
painted in the
software.
picture.
And then they know it's effed up too because it was only $10, which is pretty cheap for them. Hold on, my lights. Yeah.
You want to paint it in. And then obviously at the same time, you got people that are looking for clicks. You got people that are just looking for more discussions. There's a lot of news going out and a lot of just discussion being generated around the Nintendo Switch 2. And that's largely because of all of the deserved criticism that Nintendo has been receiving for everything dumb that they've decided to introduce to the market in the past 2 months. Not least of which being their Switch 2. Whatever the case is, one thing is for certain, moving forward.
I can't
from
tell you
this
how
point
many
in time,
videos, how
is
many
that
articles I've read since 2019. We're now in 2025. It's been 6 years of me just dreaming about a Switch 2. Because the Switch 1 had like a lot of 3D AAA games I really wanted to play portably. Witcher 3, I mean, Breath of the Wild, Zelda's a Switch, a Nintendo exclusive, so those don't count. But there were a lot of big AAA ports that came to Switch. And obviously handheld PCs weren't as big at the time. Well, they weren't existent at the time. And then GPD win in like 2020. 2021, around that time, they started making theirs. Then the Steam Deck dropped in 2022, and then we've just been seeing way better handhelds ever since. And now I have my eyes set on the Xbox ROG Ally, so it's like I'm not even really excited about the Switch anymore, like I used to be, because now we have the full PC gaming experience in a handheld with even better performance than the Switch 2, and the Switch 2 is quite the bump from the original one. 10 times the graphical performance is insane. Oh, I hit my pop filter there.
This whole idea of people suggesting that Nintendo has always had this kind of stuff in their terms of services, and consoles have always had these kind of warnings, and bans have always been prevalent, and they've always been very common and unjust, or just depending on whose moral compass was cleaned with Clorox most recently. There are two very clear signs here when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 that I think make it very different than all sorts of previous generations, and why this upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 lifespan is definitely going to be one of the worst trigger-happy generations for anybody that has a Nintendo console. First, in every other console, when they go from one system to the next one, the evolution between the consoles is pretty large. The jump between the consoles is pretty sizable and notable, which is not the case for the Switch 2. And so what happens is when they start that next console generation, the idea of early piracy is very much non-existent because the companies generally don't care anymore. They've moved on to the next big thing, and even the hackers don't really care that much anymore because all of the games from the previous generation are a fraction of the price now. So usually this early into a console's life, there is very little thought about piracy, about hacking, about mods. But in this case, because the Nintendo Switch
Honestly,
2
I used to
is
be a
just
huge
a
dirty
Nintendo
pirate
Switch.
myself. And then when I got my Steam Deck, I started working, got my Steam Deck, started buying my games on Steam. I remember specifically with No Man's Sky, because I used to pirate the game. Every time an update got released, I had to go on, I think it was Ocean of PC Games or whatever the website was called, and I had to re-download the entire game with the new update. That was annoying. No, I bought it on Steam and it just updates like it should. The only games I download for free now are emulated games. Games from other consoles, PS2, PSP, Nintendo DS, blah, blah, blah. Or PC games that are like so old and you can't really find them on stores, online stores. Kind of like that one X-Men game. I'm gonna put a picture of it on screen. And the Deadpool video game. I bet a lot of you did not know that was a thing. Yeah, so those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head.
Pro, and Nintendo still has a lot to ride on from all of their previous generation titles, including games that are now reaching 8 years old. The banhammer for the Nintendo Switch 2, specifically early on in this console's life, is going to come out swinging harder than probably we've ever seen in any generation before, because everything is lining up perfectly for Nintendo in this regard. They need all of those old games that by now people would have modded or they would have been worth $5 at GameStop. And they're already in a state where they're just trigger happy with anything that comes to legalities and lawsuits and hacks and mods, and it's the same infrastructure, so they already know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Procrastination isn't a lack of self-discipline. It's
They, not only being Nintendo, but also the hackers. Effectively, this whole circumstance, this whole situation involving hackers and mods and Switch 2 bans, and the ability to use the Mix Switch on the Nintendo Switch 2 even, is perhaps the clearest indication of how small of a leap this has been from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2.
So you're saying
and in
they haven't
many
improved
ways,
it much? I would think that obviously they know about the RCM jig thing. That's the biggest issue because they patched that. I feel like, well, no, they do know, but I feel like it's not as mainstream as the RCM jig thing that you slid into the rails of the original Switch.
Highlights how much more important it is for Nintendo to fight piracy and fight mods and hacks and any kind of tampering, because they are viewing the Switch 2 as just an update the same way that they would view their firmware updates. Already, we are facing bans, which is a clear indication that Nintendo means business, and it's a clear indication of how minor this leap has been.
Wow, so
from
they
Switch
talked
1 to
all of that
Switch
shit
2.
about improving it, and I really thought they would, and they haven't. The guy being able to hack the Switch 2, obviously the mod doesn't do much, but the fact that he was able to bypass the system software and do that graphics glitch. Hold on, let me pull it up. Just so you guys can see. Some of you probably already have. Where was it? I saw it a couple months. Yes, here it is. Let me just use Yahoo instead. Hackers discovered Nintendo Switch 2 exploit one day after launch. Minor hack allows running custom code on top of OS. So, alright. So, hold on. Blue Sky user, blah, blah, blah. Show out the exploit where he apparently discovered a weakness in console. Programming exploit. Manipulate the program by overriding its return address, turn off a piece of code, and chain together. This info system working on annotated method. In this case, display custom checkerboard graphics. So the hack doesn't really have a purpose, but it just shows that he was able to bypass the system. And it apparently only runs on the user level, so it doesn't affect the Switch 2's, the OS's kernel, which any tech-related person, tech-savvy person would know that's the core of the operating system. It handles memory management, tasks, blah, blah, blah. Alright, so yeah, you can't jailbreak this to pirate, because if I'm jailbreaking a console, it's solely to pirate. Well, not solely, but mostly to pirate. Yeah, so that's that.
And if the bans are starting in the first 12 days of the console's life, those bricks are realistically soon to follow. Those bricks that everybody likes to point and go, every single company has terms and services that claim that they can turn it into a brick. No, they don't. They all fight bans. They make it so that you can't access online. Now, in many of those consoles' cases, if you can no longer access online due to the way gaming has evolved and shifted over time, that basically means many people will view their console as a brick now. But brick, as in like you cannot use this thing anymore, blue screen of death, not even be able to play anything offline, that's yet to be done by somebody out far away. And I have a very big feeling we're going to be seeing that shut-off switch sooner than many people think.
Bro.
And
And then the licensing thing they said about you not actually owning the hardware, it's a license to use the hardware that you paid for, is I'm not buying one, or at least I won't be anytime soon. I might cave in the future, I don't know, but we'll see.
This is not fear-mongering, this is me reiterating what Nintendo put into their terms of services. Specifically in the United States of America, where they can get away with that type of language, because in Europe they couldn't do it. But I think we'll just have to wait and see. As it stands, everything is moving very fast with the Switch 2. They made their 1-month sales in the first weekend, they've run out of stock the same way that everybody runs out of stock, the scalpers are already done with their largest profit margins and now that's withering away, the hacks have come, the bans have come, and really the only thing that hasn't come yet are the Switch 2 games. But just like the remote bricking of consoles, I'm sure we'll be getting some Switch 2 games very soon as well. So once again, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next one.
Alright, so that concludes that. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. It's going to be really interesting to just watch those Switch 2s just don't function at all. Because with the Switch 1, it was obviously online bans. They banned the serial code of the console, not the account. It sucks if your account gets banned with, you know, the amount you spent on games, because it's like that's money lost. But to have the entire system shut down, that's a literal break at that point. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. IGN did a video on a review of the Switch 2, so I want to hear their opinion on that. So I'm gonna be recording that soon. I will see y'all in the next one. Goodbye.